Hello, Milwaukee Bucks fans. Welcome back to Bucks Latest presented by FanArch. I'm your host, Dean Simon. Please consider liking, subscribing, and turning on those post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. All right, for the first time in a good long while, we have an actual basketball game to recap on the channel. Very excited about that, and was more excited with the outcome as Jamaree Bouyea, who I will say that the Bucks met their quota with undersized guards that were former college stars, with Jamaree Bouyea and Marquise Noel on the Summer League roster. But Bouyea with the game-winning three, the sidestep, pump fake, step to the left, and buried it at the buzzer. It was pretty insane, and he was shot happy during this game. He took, I believe, 13 shots to get to 13 points, but obviously those last 3 points were the most important of the game. He had a pretty great game, 13, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. Obviously just a naturally gifted scorer, but he showed some playmaking chops as well. What really impressed me, though, with him, even though he may or may not earn a spot either with the Bucks or on any NBA team going into this season, was his defensive intensity, specifically on ball. He was able to poke away a few balls. He was just a overall competitive defender, and that's what you love to see, again, with a guy of his size and a guy like Noel, who he's 5'7". He doesn't really have any other choice but to be an extremely energetic and competitive defender, and that's exactly what those two guys gave. And of course, with a game like this that ended with a final score of 90-89, the Summer League, and especially the first day of the Summer League, first game of the Summer League, it's a lot like a college game, where it's not necessarily the right environment, but it's 30 guys all giving it their best and really trying to prove something. It's a defensive battle. The shot making isn't necessarily going to be there, as threes were falling for the Bucks, not so much for the Denver Nuggets and Hunter Tyson, who was pretty awesome in this one. But it was a college-like atmosphere in terms of game style, and it was very entertaining to watch because Summer League is where, along with college hoops, you get to see a lot of just pure basketball and who wants it more than the other guys on the floor. Jamaree Bouyea showed that, Marquise Noel showed that, but someone else that's going to need to show that in the near future is Andre Jackson Jr., who finished with 6 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, had a good overall game, was 2 for 2 from 3, which he opened the game with a corner 3 that splashed in, and as a guy that's super high on Andre Jackson Jr., he's the kind of guy that, I have a lot of hope for going forward, because he's the prototypical wing that the Bucks need in a situation like this where they're getting a little bit thin at the small forward position, and you have a guy in Andre Jackson Jr. who, of course, he's a freak athlete, and he can turn that athleticism into a bunch of defensive upside, but will his three-point shooting stay consistent? He had a great year from 3 this past year, and I hope that continues if he were to stay with the Bucks going into 2025-26. But in the Summer League, he's going to have a lot to prove as a guy who decided with the Bucks to push back the guaranteed date of his full contract, and you figure that he came to that agreement with the Bucks because the Bucks are thinking about other ways that they can manage their money, move things around, potentially bring in a new guy, and it could potentially make Jackson Jr. a guy that's either like a contender to be waived or on the trade market. And I'll say this, and I'll tell you how Fansided's Dalton Sell put it when he actually put out an article just before tip-off of the game. He said that with a surplus of guards, perhaps they feel like Jackson has become expendable on the depth chart, so parting with him could clear room for someone else. And again, that's just going with that idea of they can maybe scrounge together a few million more dollars, and of course with that non-guarantee on the deal for Jackson, it gives the Bucks a little more flexibility, so they could be looking for someone else to fill his role or looking for another backup point guard. So he has a lot to prove in the Summer League this year, and it's kind of an interesting case because he was a guy that I had previously thought maybe earned himself a solidified spot on the roster, maybe in spot minutes, maybe play 10 to 12 minutes a game going into next year, but it looks as though the Bucks may eventually have other plans. They might look to waive him or get rid of him in some capacity. So he has a lot to prove. But speaking of guys with a lot to prove is Chris Livingston, who was just waived by the Bucks about a little over a week before the tip-off of Summer League. He finished with 18 points, 7 for 12 shooting, 3 for 6 from 3, just played like a man possessed. And again, when speaking of players that are going out of their way amongst a whole crowd of guys in the summer league that are fighting desperately to earn a spot on an NBA roster, Chris Livingston is one of those guys that's at the top of the list in terms of the pure effort that he gave, because he was waived a little more than a week ago, and since he has already acquired a taste for NBA action, he's performed spectacularly at the G League level. He put up about 18 a game this past year for the Wisconsin Herd. Since he has already gotten a taste of what it's like to not necessarily be a consistent player in the Bucks rotation, but to have that experience and have all that G League experience, he'll be trying desperately to return in some way, shape, or form, whether it's back with the Bucks again, who think, oh, maybe they made a mistake in waiving him, maybe with another prospective team like the Nuggets, who could think, man, he really affected this game while it's the summer league. Chris Livingston just has a very versatile skill set. The jump shot didn't necessarily fully come around when he was with the Bucks in the regular season, but with the Wisconsin Herd, he had a couple of games where he had about 35 points and he would hit maybe 4 or 5 threes. So the potential has always been there for him as a jump shooter, and just as an all-around athlete, of course, that potential has really always been there. So Chris Livingston, just his ability to put his head down and really get to the rim. He was finishing reverse layups like it was nothing. He has all the potential in the world in my eyes, and I'm still a guy that's extremely high on Chris Livingston moving forward. I'm confident that he'll find his way back on an NBA roster at some point in the near future, specifically prior to 2025-26. And even if he's a guy that's playing at the G League level at a consistent rate for a team, he won't not take that. He wants to get as close as he can to an NBA call-up, but I think he does deserve a couple of minutes a night as the 9th, 10th man in a competitive team's rotation. He profiles as that kind of player, and I think that's what he could eventually turn into as his NBA and professional basketball career kind of unfurls. But he really showed the Bucks that, maybe they did make a mistake in waiving him and keeping, let's say, a guy like Andre Jackson Jr. when they could have chosen differently between those two wings. Maybe Chris Livingston gives them a little bit more upside in the Bucks' heads moving forward if Andre Jackson Jr. continues to be a little bit quiet and Chris Livingston is really putting his pedal to the metal and giving it all he's got as the summer league continues. But anyways, the final part of tonight that really stuck out to me was that the Bucks' number 47 overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, Bogaloo Markovic, he debuted and played about 11 minutes, and his debut was extremely underwhelming to me. Missed both of the free throws that he attempted horribly, didn't look particularly interested in guarding out to the three-point line, whether it was as a help defender or whatever. In any situation, he just kind of refused to get out to the three-point line. He wasn't particularly interested in boxing out or rebounding in any way, shape, or form. So it really, his game just kind of struck me as odd, and not even talking about the way he moves or the way he handles the ball. Everything that he was doing out there, I don't want to say he was just taking up space, but he didn't really seem to affect the game in any way. And it could just be him getting used to playing at the NBA level or playing NBA level basketball with NBA level athletes and just getting used to things over here in the States. And I can't judge him fully as a player through 11 minutes of play in one summer league game. Not trying to say that his potential is capped at a certain level, because I didn't think he performed well in 11 minutes. But overall, I just was not really enthused with his play, and I hope he can prove me wrong or turn my thoughts about him around in the following contests. But things just didn't really look too positive from both sides of the ball as a pure standpoint. But anyways, that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much again for watching another episode of Bucks Latest presented by FanArch. I've been Dean Simon. Again, please consider liking, subscribing, going in the comments, telling me what you think about this Summer League debut, and I hope to see you again for the next one. Go Bucks.